Right, so we're going to both in Photoshop. You can use Fire Alpaca or really any 2D program that you like. We're going to create a ladder and we're just going to place it right here. And let's see. It's going to be interesting because these tiles, they go 16 by 16 all the way across. But this particular dirt one, this dirt tile seems to only go, I guess, a little bit over that edge. So we're going to see how we can do this inside of Photoshop. Right, so inside of Photoshop, I'm going to go to File, New. And even if you don't, because I'm going to provide this artwork to you anyway, if you're in my class. If you're not, then follow along. I think you should follow along if you have Photoshop. But like I said, if you have any other, really even Paint, you could really just do this. If you look at our Unity project, these tiles that we're doing in here, if we look at this image, let me go back for a second to our art folder here for a platformer, and we look at our tiles. Here's like our flagpole. Let's see. Let's actually go to our tile map and see, or sprites rather. Yeah, sprites. If I click on this, you could see these individual pieces. And if I drag them into the scene, let's see if I can kind of look at the sprite render, see if it gives me the dimensions. I guess you just have to take my word for it, because I know we've gone in here and we've clicked on this and we've done Open Sprite Editor, and we were able to slice this and break this up by 16 by 16. You know, these little pieces. So let's see, slice by grid size. These are 64 by 64. So if I was to change this to 16 by 16, you could see this is the size. So what does this really relate to? Well, inside of Photoshop, if I make a tile that's 16 by 16 pixels and I hit create, there is our tile. That's like the one tile. And what I'd like to do is on this tile, I'd like to create essentially a really simple basic image of a ladder that is tileable. That means when I click vertically, it'll create this tile, this ladder, right? So let's go ahead and go into layers here. I'm going to close all these tabs out. Let me just close the whole tab group. I don't need all of these open. Actually, I could probably just go up here and change it to, let's see, painting maybe. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. So here's our layers. I'm going to make a new layer on top. Double click this layer to unlock it, or you could just click the lock. And I'm going to just go ahead and gut this. So I'm going to delete layer 0. So we have an empty layer here. So it'll make my background transparent. Then all I'm going to do with my brush is just hit B and then maximize my brush size. Now, if you can't see it, just hit the caps lock key and you should be able to, let's see. Maybe I have to bring it down. Yeah, I have to bring it down. Sorry. If you don't see this target reticle that represents the size of your brush, just go ahead and hit the caps lock key. All right, so I'm going to just pick a generic brown color here to make my ladder. Maybe something a little bit more colorful because of the nature. And I'm going to give myself a little bit of space on each side just because I'm trying to account for that thing. So I'm clicking up here and I'm holding shift down and I'm clicking again. And I'm going to go back and forth. I'll do the same thing here. And then I'm just going to draw a line across like this. Now I can go in here, double click this, and just add an outline because the other one has like a, let's see, has a little bit of an outline, those other pieces. Here it is, stroke is what I'm looking for. And I'm going to bring this stroke, let's click on stroke here, all the way down to 1. And we could clean this up. I'm going to make this black so it stands out. And then with my brush here, I'm just going to paint this in a little bit more down here until those really fill themselves out a little bit like that. And then I could hit E for my eraser, just kind of clean up that. Let's bring that size down a lot. Just because I don't want any darkness on the side there. All right, and then I'm going to save this. So I'm just going to do File. Yep, let's maximize this. I'm just going to save this to I'm going to pause it and save it to my desktop and save it as, let's clean that up a little bit more here, as a ladder piece. Actually, I want to show you this. Do file, save a copy, because it's going to prompt you to save it as a PSD. Throw it on your desktop and just save this as a PNG and name this ladder. So back here in Unity, what I'm going to do is in this art folder, we have these like tiles. It's this file, flagpole and stuff. I'm just going to right click, create, or import new asset, navigate to my desktop and grab that ladder PNG file. And then I'm going to go to default and I'm going to change this to Sprite 2D UI. And we're going to change this to single. And instead of 100 here, we're going to change this to 16. And let's take a look at this, make sure, and then I'll save that. And then these are all elements of our tile map. So actually I'm going to drag this into sprites. And then inside of our platformer grid here, I'm going to essentially create another tile map. So let's go to the object, tile map. I'll create another rectangular tile map here, and I'll call this climbing tile map. And this is going to represent anything that we have that allows us to climb. It could be trees, it could be whatever. Now, for this particular, I'm going to go ahead and select my platform grid here, hit apply all so that it adds it to this platformer grid prefab. And let's take a look here. Looks pretty good. Now, if we go to our tile palette here, you can see the tile palette that we have this platformer game palette, the one that is the original one. Then we have the one that we created. And let's test this out. So we have these tiles and we have the sprite art. So here's my ladder. If I drag this ladder in here, you can see because it's 16 by 16, it fits into that grid shape. And I'm going to go to games, platformer, art, tiles, and I'm going to save this in here. And now you can see we have our ladder tile, which doesn't look as good as the rest of these because we just kind of threw it together. Really what you should do is go bigger, like 2048 by 2048, and then bring it down to 16 by 16, but just because of time. So now if we look in our tiles here, we have a ladder tile, which exists. And I can actually go in here and I could say, you know what? On my climbing tile map, remember we have the layers here, right? So if we go to add layer, we have 3 different types of layers. We have these layers, which are our render layers. Then we have our sorting layer, which is what's on top of what. So for example, this background tile map, right? We don't have it on anything yet, but, this platformer we have here, here's our backgrounds. Let's make sure that our background tile map, right, so here's layer platformer, which is above the others. This, I guess, is on default, which is our background tile map. So let's go inside of here and let's go to add layer. And I'm very surprised I did not add a background here. And then I want to add a climbing. And now we have these. Oh, you know what? I wanted these to be on our sorting layers. There we go. We have platformer, we have player, we have background. So platformer, sorting layers down here. We do have it here. Background, it's BG. Climbing. Let's go ahead and add that. And because I'm a little tired, I might just call it climb. I'll just type it out. Oh, I can't be that lazy. Okay. So on this climbing tile map, I'm going to go ahead and in my sorting layer here, I'm going to assign it to climbing. And then what I could do is click on this ladder, make sure I have my paintbrush. And you could see, yeah, it doesn't quite fit because is our grid not 16 by 16? Yeah, it just might be the nature of how this is all set up because it does fit perfectly inside of this grid. So what I'll do is maybe I'll have the ladder kind of, let's see, I don't want to disrupt this because I kind of like the way this looks, but I'll have it where we can climb down this way. And now you could see that it tiles nicely. and we have it as part of this setup here. And then what I can do is, let's select, let's kind of move all this stuff over a little bit. Oh, it's this guy right here. We can have this go even lower. Is this not butting up against it? Why did that happen? Yeah, forgive me. This should really be like this. Oh, you know what? I'm on the wrong tile layer. This should be, I should be selecting our platform layer. And it looks like, there we go. The scale was off. That's why it wasn't lining up. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. So somehow my scale got off. I hit a button or something. So here's my climbing tile map. I'm going to hit my eraser and just erase this. And I'll add a ladder. Excuse me, I'll add a ladder going down this way. Sorry, it is sometimes, it's kind of too early for me here in Chicago. All right, so let's go ahead and find this guy. I think that's the right one. Yeah, something like this. So we have to go way down on this ladder. And then we have this piece here. And then we have this guy across. And then we'll put our final ladder piece here. So when our character gets here, and this is wrong, so I'm going to erase this. Sorry. Because this will mess you up. So on our platform and tile map here, this is where we want to draw. So this will catch you up too, because it's just human nature. You want to make sure that you're on the right tile map. Like this. Like this. Then you want to go to background tile map, and you want to add this area full of something, right? So maybe instead of snow back here, so let's actually finish off that snow in here too. We have like little mountains, like in Mario Brothers. So on our background tile map here, I'm going to just select like this whole big chunk, and I'm going to space these out like this. And these will represent like little background hills. And maybe we drop like a tree. See, like even this guy, let me grab my eraser. He got messed up. So start a tree there. We would have to put another tile map on top of it just called trees, which I think we might do, just to kind of offset it. But anyway, let's add that. And then maybe there is snow on the ground, just to kind of make people see that, like, you know, there's snow in front of those little hills. And then we'll have them like practice that same game mechanic of climbing. Actually, that should be under platformer. Where is my head at today? And then they have to climb up again. And then we'll have another ladder here. So if we save this and press play, let's just watch our game down here. Our character falls. He can jump up. And then they fall down, and then they're stuck, right? So we have to get our character to climb. Now I think I want my ladder, I obviously want my ladder behind the player. So what we want to do is, again, open up our climbing tile map here. Make sure that it is, sorry, down here, this climbing one. We want to click here and then do add layer. And then we want to make sure that under sorting layers here, that climbing is in front of platforms or in front of background. Yeah, so something like this. And it's in front of background behind platforms, right? And then but the player's always on top. The player's always the last layer. So I'm going to save that. Let's try that one more time so we know that our character isn't falling behind the ladder. He's got a super jump ability. Yeah. And he's in front of the ladder. All right, something else I want to point out is what I forgot to mention. I'm always kind of clicking between these because that's sort of the way I think for layers, and I like seeing it update. But you could also just click in here, and it even tells you here editing tile maps and prefabs will have a better performance. You can go to prefab mode, which is this right here, or you could do it in the scene, or you could do it in preferences. But you could actually switch them here. So it's just kind of saying like as you edit these, and then as you do that, you have to actually go back in, hit apply all to override what we did here. All right, so what we also need is on our climbing tile map, if you look at our platformer, remember we're able to walk on this because we have this composite collider 2D. So I'm just going to right click on this and copy that component, go back to climbing and just paste it. And if it even lets me, otherwise I'll just go in here and just type composite collider 2D. And something else we can do is in our ladder here, we can go to open sprite editor. And up at the top, it says sprite editor here. You can see custom physics shape. You can click on that and you could just draw out the shape here. And so it's not taking into account that shadow information that I painted in. So there we go. And I'm just going to drag it so that it's, here, let me undo that. Just drag this so it's the shape of, just roughly this. Actually, we could bring it in a little bit, because I don't want to, it's taking into account this shadow, so that's pretty good. And then I'll just hit generate. Actually, I'm going to hit apply, not generate. And apply will lock that in. So that is our physics shape, our custom physics shape for our ladder. So for when our character climbs up, he'll stay in the middle. And then in order to see it in our scene, we want to do our tile map collider 2D. Remember, composite collider 2D is what helps us to keep it from like catching, you know? And now you could see when I click on this, you can see that line. That's the collision that we set up. That's where, so now this is what allows us to see it and actually adds that collider. And that's what gives us that custom shape. All right, so up here in update, let's make a new method called climb ladder. Gonna hit control period here. Let it create that method for me. Now to get our player to climb, we already have some movement stuff going on here. So if we have this player velocity for walking, right? It equals a vector 2, and it's moving us on, it uses the move input, which is the WAD, right? This, if you forgot what this does, you could always just click on it and then hit F12, it'll take you to the original definition. So this has a vector 2. You could hit F12 again, and then it'll take you to the different parts of the code. So we have here, we're using it to on move. We're storing whatever our A and D keys or our left and right arrows are inside of here. So we're going to have to adjust that, right, from .x to .y. But let's go ahead and copy this chunk of walking code here, where it's doing a couple things. One, on our velocity, it's adding that player velocity. So let's go ahead and do this. So we're going to copy this. Oops. Control C to that. Let's go all the way up to our climb ladder. And honestly, this should really be, let's highlight this whole thing. I'm going to hold Alt and push my down arrow. If this scares you a little bit, moving it like this, you can cut and paste, but there's on move, on jump, and then this is going to be our climb ladder. So I'm just going to put it next to it. And I just want to make sure that it's below this thing. It's in between these. So you want to double check that no red lines appear. So you could just collapse these like this so that you're kind of seeing the collapse, and then here's your on climb ladder. It's below this. So a couple of things is we want to write, this should be our climb velocity. And then that's going to give us an error because this should be climb velocity here. And then, well, on our climb velocity, we have a new vector 2. We have the movement input x, and then we have times run speed. And then we have linear velocity dot y, right? This is where we want to be able to move our character up if we're on a ladder object. Right, so how do we do this? Well, we're going to focus on each line. So on our x-axis, it says move input.x, right? This is the climb ladder. I still want a little bit of movement on the left or right when I'm moving, but I'm going to not do run speed here. So I'm going to get rid of that. So all this is doing right now is it's just saying whatever the current x velocity is, this move input.x. Actually, what I want to do is I want to get this is what I want to do. I just want to get whatever our current rigid body velocity is on the x-axis. So this isn't really, it's just keeping us at whatever the value is of the left or right. And then for the y-axis here, what I'm going to do is I want to actually get the move input, right? So let's see. I'm going to move this down a little bit so that you could see it. So I want to get the move input dot y. So what does that mean? Remember, sorry, actually, I had recorded so many of these videos that my Camtasia crashed. So back up to this. Back to move input. What is move input doing? In our onMove method, which is created here, which is part of, if we click on our player, we have this, again, sorry if I'm being redundant, but I think it helps a lot of people. We have this player input field. And if we select move here, right, and we select our player, this is on our player, where is that input controller? Down here. We have an onMove method here, and this onMove method is tied to what we set up before, which is these WASD keys. And A and D, the A key and the D key on the keyboard, are already mapped to vector 2, so being the x-axis. So that all that code is done for us, and that's why I keep stressing this, is because that little disconnect between, you're not actually hooking it up, right? I mean, you're hooking it up, but you're not actually doing the background work of programming a whole input system. So anyway, back to this, you have move input. It's equal to the value of whatever we're pressing on the x and y axis mapped to these keys. So if we go back down to our jump here, I'm going to use move input.y, and then I want to create another variable here that is, we have run speed here. Let me kind of let me bring this in a little bit here. And I'm going to hit Control D, and I'm going to name this climb speed. And I don't know what that climb speed is going to be, but I'm going to save that. And then down here in this on this climbing method. And the reason I don't name it on climbing is because here's walking. Where's my climbing? Oh, here's climb ladder. Is because I like to keep, if this is called on climb here, I want to keep it to whatever this is. So I'm going to multiply this move input here, .y, times climb speed. And the reason for that, again, is I want to be able to control how fast my player climbs. Okay, so another thing I want to do is, if you recall up here, instead of wrapping it in an if statement, I showed you a different way of doing it where, let's see, inside of walking here, where we have let's see, I thought I put it inside of here. Maybe I used it in, on jump. Oh, somehow, okay. Somehow my code got deleted from the last one. Looks like when that crash happened. So it happened. So what are we doing here? So if I press play right now, for some reason that code did not save. Because we have this, let's see, here's our player controller. We have the same script, I believe. It's the same speed. So what's happening here is this, right? So if we press play, just to kind of reiterate what the issue is, and then I'm going to pause the video, just type out that code again. If I hit, yeah, look, something crazy is going on. All right, so on our jump method here, I should have this. Here, I'm going to pause the video and just type this out. So let's Oh, here we go. Here's our unjump method. Geez, where's my brain? I want to copy this code here, and I'm going to paste it up here. So, sorry guys, I have baby brain. So we have this method here, which is checking if our collider, right, on jump, if our capsule collider 2D is touching the layer, right? What layer are we getting? We're getting a platformer here. Well, what I want to do is I want to make a new layer inside of here. So what this climbing layer is going to be, instead of platformer, and if we select our platformer, you can see we have a layer here. So inside of climbing here, I'm just going to make a new layer, and I'm just going to call it climbing. So layer, add layer, and this is a layer mask. So here's platformer. I'm just going to name this climbing. Copy this, make sure that locks in, and then in here, I'm going to change that layer mask to climbing, and I'm going to change this to climbing. So what is this saying? What is happening here? Once this method is called, right, and this method is called every frame. That's why it's an update. So it's always being called. Once it's calling, it's checking, hey, am I currently touching something called a platformer? If I'm not touching something called a platformer, which is those, or sorry, let me close on jump. Here we go. If am I touching something called climbing, right? My climbing layer, and that's this guy right here. So this is on a climbing layer, and it's a sort layer of climbing. And actually, let's go in here and see what happened with my layers here. If I go to my sorting layers, we have climbing in front of background, and interesting that it. Oh, they're over here. That's why. Oh man. Okay. So here is our these guys here. So what's happening is if we get to these ladders, right? Because we're on a climbing tile map and it's set to climbing now. If we get there, if we are not touching something that's called climbing, then this doesn't work, right? Like it's just going to return. It's going to leave this climbing ladder. But if we are touching something called ladder, then we can climb, which is kind of cool. So let's go back to our game here. I'm going to save this. Let's press play. And there we go. Okay, so now he falls. I can jump. I can jump some more. I can jump down here, and now I'm stuck. But if I go in here, oops, we got to make sure that this he can interact because right now, I mean, he's able to climb, but the collision that's on here. Notice I have to push forward and the up arrow to get him to climb, and now I'm up here. I don't know if I want him to be able to like like kind of move inside of it. This thing is definitely moving up. So we got to fix that where I'm able to like pull the whole ladder up. I mean, maybe that could be a mechanic where you could push these ladders around. That'd be kind of cool. Like it's here and then that's part of the mechanic. And that's how you climb. I kind of like that. All right, so what we want to do is on this climbing layer here, in order to make it so that we're not knocking these over, change it from dynamic to static. And now when I hit Control S to save this, we should be good to go. Let's see. So I'm moving, I'm jumping, jumping again, jumping up. And now I can climb up if I hold forward and move forward. See that? And I'm not moving that ladder. But if you like that moving ladder thing, just leave it as dynamic. So you could really just kind of make a ladder that's like this high and then they have to like climb up the top and then jump. So it's really up to you how you want to make your super cool platformer. Now, something else you can do if you don't like this where you're climbing on the side, you want to climb like in the center, which is probably what you want to do. Just go ahead inside of your collider and just turn it into a trigger. Now when you press play, that should allow us to walk through it and climb it because we're actually just using that object, the object's rigid body. So you can see I'm falling through. Oh, I guess I'm not falling through. Let's see. I marked that as a trigger. Oh, this one has to be a trigger too. Let's see. Tile map collider 2D. I think we'll leave this off as a trigger. Let's see if that works. If not, we'll have to turn both on. gonna be lazy and just cheat a little bit for the moment, and then, and you could also, I mean, at this point, you should feel comfortable enough to maybe make a power up. I mean, based on all the games we made, and that power up will increase jump speed. But we'll do stuff like that later. There we go. All right, so now I am not falling through. So let's turn both triggers on. Let's select our climbing tile map. Turn both triggers on. There we go. Now I can climb. Cool. And I should be able to just be inside the center and then push up arrow without moving left or right. So I'll leave that up to you, what you want to do. I'm going to just go ahead and be traditional and just turn on is trigger on both of these and save it. I think we're almost at 20 minutes or maybe more. And yeah, so that's some ladder functionality. Hopefully it wasn't too confusing, and I hope you enjoyed that.